GOP congressman says, I don't care whether rolling back the Biden administration's marijuana rescheduling move under a potential Trump presidency hurt the Republican Party because he feels more strongly that the modest reform would endanger public health. At the Republican National Committee conference last week, longtime prohibitionist Representative Andy Harris, a guy from Maryland, was asked about the potential political ramifications of rescheduling reversal under the second Trump administration and GOP-controlled Congress. He put it bluntly, I don't care, he said, whether it's good for the party or not. I just don't care. It's not good for your health. My opinion is always the same. It's not healthy for you. It's bad. I think it's bad policy. Harris told Marijuana Moment. Congressman is well known for his opposition to cannabis reform. In addition to championing a long-standing appropriations rider that blocked Washington, D.C. from legalizing marijuana sales for a decade, he's also pushed the head of the Drug Enforcement Administration to reject the Justice Department proposal to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substance Act, for example. While Harris suggested that rescheduling move would increase access to a substance he views as dangerous, a Schedule 3 reclassification would not federally legalize marijuana. The main effects of the policy change would be removing the research barriers linked to Schedule 1 drugs and allowing state-licensed cannabis businesses to take federal tax deductions available to other industry. The congressman said in a news interview with Marijuana Moment that he has, quote, no idea, unquote, how former President Donald Trump, who was officially named the party's presidential nominee for the third time at the GOP convention, will approach marijuana policy issues. He said, you've got to ask Mr. Trump. Just on the fact that red and blue states alike have increasingly moved to enact legalization, Harris claimed that he's in the company of experts as National Institute on Drug Abuse Director Nora Volkow is opposing the policy. Harris said, quote, if we're outliers, well, you know, sometimes outliers are right. Harris has previously suggested that the NIDA director adamantly opposed the rescheduling proposal, despite the fact that her agency officially concurred with the recommended policy change, as well as Volkow's repeated public comments criticizing research barriers imposed by cannabis's current Schedule 1 status. In the new interview, the congressman also seemed to misstate the Biden administration has come down to controversial spending rider blocking D.C. marijuana sales, suggesting at one point that the president's latest budget omitted that language when, in fact, it maintained it. It was, however, removed from the base bill of the latest House version of the legislation in GOP committee, but the rider was re-added via amendment later in the legislative process. House Rules Committee will be taking up a proposed amendment to the bill next week that would eliminate the provision. That panel has blocked numerous cannabis reform proposals over the past session and is not expected to clear it for floor consideration. Multiple GOP lawmakers spoke to Marijuana Moment last week about how they feel about marijuana policy and how it will be addressed under another Trump administration if the former president is reelected. Most deferred to Trump, though they offered competing visions of what they thought would happen. At the convention, the former president also formally announced his vice presidential running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, a Republican from Ohio, whose record on marijuana policy includes opposition to bipartisan cannabis banking reform legislation and adult use legislation, but support of states' rights to enact their own marijuana laws. The Democratic National Committee, meanwhile, is touting Biden's marijuana pardons and rescheduling moves, calling for broader reform to expunge prior records. However, unlike in 2020, the party's latest draft platform that was approved by a party committee on Tuesday doesn't promote broader cannabis decriminalization. The Biden campaign was also stepping up its push to draw a contrast between the president's marijuana policies and those of the former President Trump. Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now the Democratic nominee for president, has matured with her view on cannabis over the years. She opposed a 2010 California ballot initiative to legalize marijuana. In 2015, she called for an end to the federal ban on medical marijuana during the Democratic State Convention. However, when Californians voted to legalize recreational marijuana in 2016, then Attorney General Harris did not take a stance. During her tenure as a district attorney in San Francisco, over 1,900 individuals were convicted for cannabis offenses. Nevertheless, some reports indicate that the majority of those apprehended for minor possession not face incarceration. Only a few individuals were in prison for cannabis-related crimes under Harris's administration. Harris has recently changed her stance, actively supporting legalization and co-sponsoring several proposed reforms in the last few years, such as the Safe Banking Act, Marijuana Justice Act, and the MORE Act. In a 2019 interview, The Breakfast Club, Harris expressed her support for cannabis legalization and mentioned she smoked pot in college. In March, Kamala Harris stated nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed during a discussion with rapper Fat Joe and others who have been pardoned for marijuana convictions, emphasized that far too many people have been jailed for simple marijuana possession. Although Harris initially lacked a strong pro-reform stance on cannabis, she has since shifted her position, publicly supporting legalization, sharing her own cannabis experiences, co-sponsoring bills to aid the cannabis industry and address the war on drugs. Enough about Kamala. What do you guys think about Andy Harris's, opposition to cannabis? And, if you don't mind, Jason, if you can play that clip where I interviewed Andy Harris several years ago, you can tell that hasn't changed his stance one bit. So at least you got to give him that.
Mm-hmm. You got the clip ready, Adam?
I simply asked him what his thoughts were on medical marijuana.
Okay.
Marijuana is confusing to me because I'm an anesthesiologist. I write prescriptions. I prescribe drugs against pain, other anesthetics all day. And when I do it, I prescribe a pure substance at a specific dose, specific time intervals, controlled. The drug has been FDA approved. None of this is true of medical marijuana. And for that reason, I support the use of components of marijuana for medicinal purposes, but not the raw form itself. It doesn't cure any ailments. What it does is some components of marijuana possibly help with some of the symptoms. For instance, with cancer, the THC, one of the main components of marijuana, clearly helps with appetite in people whose cancer treatment takes away their appetite. No question about it. CBD, another cannabinoid, clearly has some use in treating childhood epilepsy. That's very different from the raw plant.
I can play it from my mixer.
No, we just heard it. We just played it.
But it didn't go. It didn't go over the air though.
Yeah, it did.
Okay. Maybe everybody at home heard it. We just can't.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I definitely heard it. I don't know how you guys couldn't.
Yeah, so he's an anti-guy. He's been an anti-guy forever.
But he said he's good with components, and he said that he's good with THC for cancer patients because he knows that helps the appetite. So he's taking this from his pragmatic doctor state where he is. So I'm surprised he's not a fan of Schedule III because it's going to isolate all those different compounds for the pharmaceutical industry.
Right. Well, I mean, he's also good with carrying loaded pistols on Congress floor.
I don't have a problem with that.
That's true.
Oh, man.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Of course not. Why would you?
It's America, bro.
Right.
I mean, I think that,
I mean, you have all the Capitol Hill police and everyone else carrying guns. What's the problem?
I think that there's a problem that how many years ago was that interview? I'm sorry.
Why he's bringing this up is it speaks to the judgment and state of mind of the person who is railing against this lane of progress and societal evolution. And lawmakers who are hopefully trained in making good public policy doesn't mean they should have the right to show up to work strapped. Jason, I know that you know that I know that you know that that's some bullshit, and you can say whatever
he's a member.
Want,
he's a member of Congress. He's a member of Congress.
That's right, which does not make him trained in close combat skills, nor does it make him qualified to have a firearm at work.
I agree. I think that
it does speak to his judgment.
I agree with Yarrow 110%. And Todd, I wanted to know when that interview that you did with him was, because as policymakers, we would hope that their minds are changed, that they are advancing thought, and that they're, open to new information. If his stance is exactly the same, that what you're doing right now is very bad, that's probably not who we want ruling on anything.
Yeah, that was almost 10 years ago, 2015.
2015.
You've learned nothing in 10 years, no matter the research, no matter, nothing. That's disappointing.
He hasn't really evolved that much on this issue.
He hasn't evolved at all. It doesn't seem.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if somebody offers him a little bit of money, then he'll start evolving.
He should go to Thailand, right?
Yeah.
It's probably cheaper for him to just go to New York.
Evolve.
Just saying.
Oh man.
Just saying.
All right.